Welcome to today's DIY home decor project where we're upcycling a simple terracotta pot using paints and Posca pens. To get started, I've purchased this little terracotta pot from the local hardware store. It was about $2, so really cheap. This is just a small one. You can do this project with any size pot. You might even like to upcycle some pots from a local charity shop or thrift shop. Now, the first thing we need to do is pick our paint colors. Now I am using interior house paint. These paints go on so beautifully onto the terracotta pots. If you're using normal acrylic paints that you would normally use for a canvas, I find they just don't go on as smoothly. These interior sample pots have got latex in them, which makes them go on really smoothly. They're not expensive. You can even sometimes find an absolute bargain at the hardware store where they've got mist tinted colors for $1. So these cost me around $8 or $9 from my local Bunnings, and I love to just get a really bright and colourful selection. You can use any colours you want depending on the finished look that you're after. I did bring up about 5 different colours, but I only ended up using 3 of the total colours. You'll also need a glass or a jar of water just to rinse your paintbrush out, a little piece of paper. I usually use paper towel, and a paintbrush. So I'm using a paintbrush that is approximately 1 centimeter in width, and that is all I need for this small size. If you're doing a bigger size pot, obviously you'll probably want to use a bigger size paintbrush, which you can either get from your local craft store or your hardware store. Now it's time to start painting. I start at the bottom of the pot, but I don't paint the base. That's because when it's time to turn the pot over to paint the top part, we don't want to get the pot stuck to the paper that we're using to protect it from our table. Now, you can paint the base if you want, but obviously you're going to have to wait for that to completely dry before you then turn it over to get painting the rest of the pot. So I'm just going to do this line all the way around. It's about 2 centimeters thick or an inch or so, but you can choose to do as many different colors and layers as you want. With this small size pot, I've decided to stick with 3 in the end, and then we use our Posca pens to go in over the top and add lots of details. But you might choose to do thinner rows of color than I am, or thicker rows of color, or just stick with 1 color paint for the base altogether. It's totally up to you. So once you've done that first row of paint color, you rinse your brush off in your water and then give it a little dab on the dabby paper just to get any excess water off there, and then onto your second colour. I've decided to go with this beautiful aqua colour for my middle colour. I love this colour. It's one of my absolute favourites. I use it all the time. But you could do, like I said earlier, any combination of colour you want. You might want to do it monochromatic, so just sticking with like a pink, a darker pink, and then a mid pink, and then a light pink. Or like you might go neutral colors, or all like greens, or just alternating like white and red or something. It's totally up to you. Now you may need to come back over these paints and do a second coat. It really depends on what colors you're using. Some colors have higher paint tint in them, like yellow for instance is quite transparent, so you sometimes do need to wait for the layer 1 to dry and then go back over and do a second coat. So for the third colour on my pot, I've decided to go with this lime green. Now this paint is a little dried out. I accidentally left the lid off a few of my paints from the weekend, and it's nearly empty, so I just want to be able to use the last bit of it. So if you do find that your paint has started to dry out a little bit, you can just add a little water and hope that that gives it a little bit of a smoother consistency rather than wasting that nice little bit of paint that I've got left there. Next, we're coming to the inside of the pot. Now, you do not have to paint the inside of the pot, or you could just do around the rim, so like an inch or 2 to 3 centimeters in from the top, just so when you plant your plant, it does still have that nice finish on the inside and you're not seeing the terracotta. I decided just to paint the entire inside because I had a paint in just this little cup here that needed to be used anyway. But yeah, I wouldn't necessarily paint the entire inside of the pot unless you're not using it as a planter, unless you're using it to like store pens or something like that where you're going to see the inside. But yep, I've just done it for this one just because I needed to use that paint anyway. Now, once I've left my pot to dry for about half an hour, it is time to do the Poscas. This is my favorite part. I love adding detail with Poscas. So as you can see, I've really just done three simple colors of acrylic paint, and now we're going to add all the detail. Now, when I'm starting this design, I don't have a really clear vision of how I want it to look. I just know that I want it to look quite detailed, cluttered, maximalist, colorful. So you might prefer to really pre-plan out your design. I have done this sort of thing a lot, so I'm just sort of going with the flow. So I just think about what colors will sit nicely on top of each paint color. So for pink, a color that really stands out to me is yellow. I just think it looks really nice together. So I've just decided to go around and do really simple little flowers, which is just 4 petals, and then coloring them in. And again, like I said with the paint, same with the Poscas, yellow especially is one of those colors that has high tint factor, so it comes out quite transparent. So it will need a second coat once this first coat of Posca's dry. Just be careful with your hand placement as you're turning your pot around. Poscas do smudge because they don't dry straight away, so just be mindful about how you're holding your pot, not to smudge the work that you've just done, because there's nothing more frustrating than when you do that. Once you've finished that first row of design, just have a look around and make sure they're fairly evenly spaced, which mine isn't. That last one was quite a bit thicker than it should have been, but I feel like there's always a good side and a bad side when you do pot painting. So yeah, so now that those flowers have dried off a little bit, I'm going over with a second coat, and I've also decided just to add a little dot in between each flowers to make it look a little bit more, I guess the word's maximalist. I really want it to look really detailed on this one. But if you're after a more minimal look, then maybe you don't add so much detail and pattern with your Poscas and just do some simpler designs. Now for the next layer, I've decided to go with some pink hearts over this nice aqua color. This is a lighter pink, so I'll start with this and see how it goes. If it's too light and doesn't give me enough definition, I'll go back over the top with the hot pink, because the hot pink Posca always gives a really bright and funky look. Okay, now we are going to do some pattern work over the green. And for this layer, I really love the idea of some big chunky scallops, and then I will go in and put some little mini scallops within the bigger scallops. I always love this as a finish, and it's probably one of my go-to sort of doodling techniques when I'm doing lots of little drawing details within my paintings, and I just think it finishes it really nicely. Now you notice I hesitated here, and it's because I was thinking about spacing for the final scallops, and I honestly should have done those last two quite a bit thinner to make that last little one not so thin. But here we are, and it's fine. Like I said, the pot always has a backside, and that is its backside. So now I'm just going in and doing a second little scallop and colouring it in, and I just really like this finish. It always just adds a really nice touch. Now that I've finished all the scallops, I'm just going around the top of the pot and just giving it a little bit of a nicer finish, because it was quite rough as I was drawing in those second scallops. Okay, now that the little yellow flowers are dry, I'm just getting the white Posca pen and doing a little dot in the center for the flowers. And I've also decided to do a little dot inside the dot that's in between the flowers, just because it gives it a little more detail. Once I'm finished that, I've just had a look to see what else I think it needs. It really is all about layering and layering with this type of design. So I'm adding a cute little red heart in between the larger, bigger hearts. So making size differences between each shape can really add to the interest of the pattern. So it's always something to keep in mind. Changing colors, changing styles, changing sizes, all adds to that really cool eclectic maximalist look if that is what you're going for. And now that I've added these red hearts, I've realized that pink is too light. So I'm just deciding what I will do. Will I go over the entire heart with the hot pink? Will I do this dot pattern? I don't like that. Have a little look at it, have a play, see what you think. And then I've decided to do just an outline to see if I like that look. Again, I have a little play, have a little look, and I decided I do not like that still. So that's when I've decided, let's just colour the hearts in completely, going over the light pink to make hot pink hearts instead. And I don't know about you, but I instantly know that that just looks so much better. I think it looks much more in line with the bright, cluttered, maximalist, eclectic vibe. And so now I just have to go around and redo all of those hearts in that lovely bright hot pink. Now we could stop there. That could be finished as is. But I have decided that I really want to go for it and really get that really detailed pattern, lots and lots of different colors. So I'm adding in another blue. I'm just going around to redefine the line between the green and the aqua. I'm not sure at this point, to be honest, if this blue is going to work and whether I'm going to like the pattern, but I'm just sort of going with the flow and not worrying too much. Always remember, if you're doing this type of thing, you can always paint over it. If you really, really hate it when you get to the end of your design, you can paint over it. Or if you're a bit more of an organized person than I am, you might just get a piece of paper and plan out the design. You can just do it flat. Obviously, then once you get to your pot, you're just going to work that pattern all the way around the pot, but you can just do it flat across a sheet of paper and just to get the sort of style and the look of your pattern that you want to add. Or if you're more like me and you just want to wing it, then just go for it. And then you can just fix it if you need to with paint. So I'm again adding some scallops. I'm doing sort of a higher scallop and a lower scallop just to sort of work in with those bigger scallops in the aqua. And I'm again at this point, I'm just not sure how this is looking, but we're committed now. We're going to do the whole thing. And after having a little look, I decided I didn't like it just plain. So we're doing just filling in another little scallop in every second scallop. And already I feel like that looks better than it did just empty. So we're going to do that all the way around. And then just sort of having a look and deciding what else I think it needs. I'm just adding one final touch, and that is this emerald green color. I'm just doing dots to define the line between the pink and the aqua paint. Now, I feel like this green dotted line brings the whole design together. It sort of gives it more balance where I've done that darker blue, and it just really gives that really busy, vibrant design that I was originally looking for. So now just having a look around at the pot again, just seeing, does it need anything else or are we done? And at this point, I thought I was done, but then I decided I think it just needs one more little touch. So I've gotten the light pink and I'm just adding very simplistic little hearts in there. So as you can see, I'm not even making the shape of a heart. I'm just going down and up. And in that tiny size, that gives you the look of a heart really nicely. So I decided that I'm going to use my little pot as a little herb garden. So I just bought myself some fresh basil and have just planted it in there. I think this style of upcycled terracotta pots would look really cute in a cluster where each one has got some different colours and different patterns. But I'd love to know how you go with this. Give it a go and let me know what you think.